Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you. I confess I got tired just by listening. Monica's, retelling of the whole tale. It's a lot. I've been doing comics for 20 years now. It's my life's passion, and it's my job, which is so much fun. So today I want to talk to you guys about comic books in Brazil from a historical, social, artistic, and kind of economical perspective. Because you've been studying Brazil in so many aspects, and there's so much of Brazil that we can't talk enough because there's so much to be talked about. And we might think that comic books are just this little anecdote, like, okay, this is the last official class this semester, so they put the comic book guide just to, okay, comic books. But it's so huge, it's so amazing. And I don't know if you guys know much about Brazilian music, or Brazilian TV, or Brazilian movies, but it's as big as everything else. It's a whole universe. And we've been doing that since way before you guys might think. So, so here are a few of my most recent books. Here are some pages from works of mine. So it's true. I can promise you guys that I do this. Okay, right. And in English, Vincent in Pieces was released last year, and Teardrop was released this year. These are both in English. You can find that on Amazon, and you can find it in printed versions and ebook versions. And I'm still trying to translate and publish more around here. So, first of all, I like to start all my talks and lectures with this question. Who reads comics here? Okay, any kind of comic is comic, okay? Manga, comic strips, on Instagram or webtoons, whatever, that's all comics. Okay, so this kind of medium, this kind of language is very powerful. We're not trying here to define what are comics, but, actually, who is something more? Is there anyone here who draws or writes or have any creative? Yeah? Nice. I see a few hands like this. I don't know. Okay, if you write and you draw, you're already doing it. Yes, keep on doing it. So, I'm gonna throw some polemic questions here. Let me move the arrow from the head. Okay. So, first of all, comic books. I told you guys it's a medium. Okay, it's a language. It's a way of telling stories. But are comics literature? Okay, no. Okay, this discussion has ended. Okay, next slide. Okay, why are they not literature? Because they're not movies, and they're not theater, and they're not photography. Okay, each of those names are universes on their own. So comics is a proper language, a proper medium. So whenever we say, okay, comics are a subgenre of literature, we're diminishing comics. Comics is a thing of its own. But are comics art? Maybe, depending on what you call art. Because if we're going to talk about art like in a very broad spectrum, of course. We even called it the sequential arts, right? But some comics might not be what you call art, and that's okay, because comics can be entertainment. Just plain simple entertainment, Oh, also forgot to tell you guys, every single image I'm gonna show you guys are from Brazilian comics, okay? Either independent or web comics or published or whatever, editorial. So Combo Rangers is a very, very famous comics. It started in the web back in the 90s. Remember the 90s? Probably not. So Fabio Yabu started publishing these comics inspired by the Power Rangers. So they are the same idea, like Tokusatsu heroes, and it got very famous in Brazil. So it could be just entertainment, right? But most recently, but actually, if you think about Japanese and North American comics, comics are kind of IP farms, intellectual properties, okay? So it's not just comics. If you take like Marvel Comics, for example, the movies are way bigger than the comic books right now. And that's, I mean, part of the whole experience. Comics are not just things that you read and throw away. They can be turned into video games, toys, movies, cartoons, etc., action figures, stuff like that. The thing is, comics are universal. They can be whatever you need them to be. They can bring any kind of style you want to read. They can be anything you want, actually. You know. So sometimes we have this kind of weird assumption, and most people, I understand, but unfortunately, most people have this wrong understanding that comic books are for kids, or for nerds, or for losers. And they are for these people, of course, but they are for every single one of you as well. I'm pretty sure that maybe, like, I don't know, I read like comic strips, I read something on Instagram sometimes, but I don't read comics. But what do you like? What do you enjoy? Do you like zombies, ballerinas, and heavy metal? I have a comic for you. You like Vikings, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, but you also like comedy. I have a comic book for you. Okay? You can find anything you want on comic books. We just have to look for it. Okay, in Brazil, the term we use is História em Quadrinhos. História em Quadrinhos literally means stories in frames. Okay, so it's interesting that we haven't used a term that connects so much with comedy. Because here in the US, we say comic books, and comic is funny. Mostly because, I mean, there's still a lot of funny comics, of course, but in the beginning of the medium, most stories that were presented in this kind of medium were funny. And they were aimed for kids. And that's okay. So the term comic books remained. And today we can use like webtoons, graphic novels, web comics, I don't know, trade paperbacks. You can call it whatever you want. Or the greater term, sequential art, which is like, you know, graphic novels. These terms try to engrandecer, like make it bigger, make it larger, and more serious for people to understand that, okay, comics can be funny Garfield strips, but they can also be very strong, mature reading. Okay? It's just a matter of finding your story. And then, something that is actually pretty interesting to think about. I'm here to talk about Brazilian comics, but what makes a comic Brazilian? I don't know. No? So maybe that's like a rhetorical question. We don't need to answer that. But if you think about what makes like an American comic American, what makes a Japanese comic Japanese, what makes Belgian, what's Belgian? Belgian comic Belgian? I don't know. Usually, we tend to connect a few adjectives to define comics from different places based on the comics that were made before, like, I guess, proper globalization and internet. So you could say like, okay, I can identify a Japanese comic, a manga. It's kind of easy. It's not easy today. There's people in Brazil, in the US, in France, everywhere, drawing inspired by the Japanese style, which is like every style imaginable. They have comics for everybody there. So it's easy, kind of, to talk about American comics based on superheroes, or manga based on shonen and shoujo, or Belgian comics based on Tintin and Asterix. But Brazilian comics are a beautiful mess. It's amazing. It's everything. Okay, as this image shows you guys. Okay, everything here is from Brazilian comics. There's a Brazilian expression we use a lot that is Brazil is not for beginners. Okay, this is a cartoon by Angeli, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, political cartoonist in Brazilian history. He was active until recently. there's this homeless guy on the streets ripping part of the flag and wearing it as a blanket. Our flag means order and progress, and I mean, you know by this point in this class that Brazil is far from being ordered and progressive, but we're trying. We're always trying. But we joke about this Brazil not being for beginners because it's so hard to understand. There's so much to understand, to know about, that it's super hard to explain. Okay, what it means to be Brazilian, and what it means to have a comic book be Brazilian. Okay, what happens is, during Brazilian history, but I'm just gonna pick like the final years of the 19th century, the 20th century, and now, it's a roller coaster. If you think about political and economical crisis, okay? It's a plural. So I like to call this the many rises and falls of the Brazilian comics because except for maybe one or two experiences, like people players, it just doesn't seem to survive. It's very hard. Arts in Brazil are a complicated thing. And comic books being a niche of a niche of a niche, and being so, let's say, fragile as an industry, as a scene. We actually don't call industry, you know? When we talk about like the North American comic book industry. Well, there is an industry, but Brazil, we have a scene. We don't have even a market. We're building it. And it never seems to be enough time in this development to just stabilize and okay, now we have it. Okay, we have this foundation where we can build more. So every time we kind of take 2 steps forward, we are obliged to go back 3 or even 2 and then start again. It's complicated, but we're still making it. And okay, I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about this. Oh yeah, there's another popular saying like Brazilians never give up, and we don't. We might, fall, and then we get up, we dust, we swear a lot, and then, okay, let's do this again until we make it. Okay, this is a drawing by Flávio Colim. Colim is an example of artists in Brazilian comic book history that were almost forgotten because it's hard to keep track of everything, and we have like such a rich production over the century. And because of this fragility, let me put this way, fragility, we kind of forget, So Colim is being revived nowadays. There's a company making collections, his works are being republished. Many of Colim's work were kind of forgotten because they were not published, they were not available for reading. And he's one of the great masters. He's one of the most innovative graphic artists in Brazilian history. Like, even outside of comics, if you think about design and, the visual arts, he's there. Okay, so a little bit of histories. We celebrate the January 30th as our National Comic Book Day. And every single year, we have to tell people it's not, it's Dia do Quadrinho Nacional, it's National Comic Book Day. It's not National Comic Book Day, it's National Comic Book Day. Comics made in Brazil. So every single year, there is like a newspaper or an influencer or somewhere in the internet, people saying, let's celebrate the National Comic Book Day, and they put an image of Spider-Man. And then we have, oh, you actually missed the point. It's National Comic Book Day, and not National Comic Book Day. We celebrate January 30th because of this dude. Okay, so he's the first guy I need to talk to you about. Angelo Agostini wasn't even Brazilian. He was an Italian migrant. He came to Brazil. Actually, he went to Brazil. I'm not there anymore. He went to Brazil, and he was a journalist, an illustrator, a cartoonist, a political figure too, and he created newspapers and magazines to publish news, of course, and cartoons. This is what is accepted by historians in Brazil, the very first comic book story ever published there. Okay, it was published in a newspaper. It's called Inhoquim. The character is called Inhoquim. And it's the first part of a story of him leaving the countryside and going to the metropolis, to Rio de Janeiro, to face the capital, because back then Rio was the capital. This was the first comic book ever published in Brazil. And then there's a catch, because probably whenever you would research what is the first comic book, the first actual modern comic book in history, it's probably gonna say Yellow Kid by Oldcoat, 1896. The thing is, Agostini published Inhoquim kind of 30 years before that. So the idea of a sequential narrative with panels, with captions or word bubbles, Agostini did it first, and Oldcoat did it later. But I don't know, we can argue about that, but I'm biased, so. And then there's also another interesting fact that we call comic books in Brazil, like the popular term, the term we use like with endearment is gibi, like that, gibi. So when you say you read comic books, you're usually gonna say I read gibis, okay? And then we can call like gibizinho, which is like a small gibi, revistinha, HQ, which is HQ, from História em Quadrinhos, or simply quadrinho. I read quadrinho. But gibi is a polemic kind of word that we took and later resignified. And that's like a beautiful thing that comes from comics. Because first of all, GB was an anthology magazine. It published a lot of famous comic strips from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, like Plastic Man, like Flash Gordon, Captain Marvel, not the Marvel one, but the DC one, who we call Shazam because of trademark issues. Mandrake, The Phantom, a lot of stuff. But GB is an old word in Portuguese, which is a slang for a young black kid. And it was used in like a negative way. And the mascot of this publication was a little black kid. He's also depicted right there on the top. And he was drawn like in that horrible way, like very, very stereotypical, don't get me started. But then what happens? Nobody in Brazil in the last, probably 40 years, nobody used this word anymore unless to talk about comics. So it lost the original meaning and it was transformed into a synonymous to comic books. And I think that's good, right? So I told you guys, like, ever since Angelo Agostini started publishing comic strips in newspaper, it never stopped. We've been making comics since then. Like, it's been a while, it's been a long time. And each of the rises and falls of Brazilian comic book production is really tied to economical and political crisis. Because if there is an economical crisis, which means people have less money, people will buy less superfluous stuff. What is disposable in your daily life? Entertainment. You're going to stop buying books and comics and going to the movies and going to the theaters. Especially if that gets more expensive, because the economical crisis makes paper expensive, makes printing expensive, makes transporting expensive. So it's been a roller coaster, like I told you guys. So from 29 until the 60s, we had a lot of newspaper supplements, which were like anthologies. They published comic strips, they published a lot of stuff from different countries, and we made our own too. We had like national and international characters occupying the same pages. I got here an example of O Guarani, which is a comic book adaptation of José de Alencar's very, very popular romance, novel actually. And it was adapted by, oh my God, what's the name of the maestro? Carlos Gomes. God, he's from our city. Come on. So Carlos Gomes was one of the most important maestros in conductors and composers in Brazilian history, and he composed an opera based on Guarani. And we have comic books adapting O Guarani. So it was really big in Brazil back in that time, like literary adaptations from Brazilian literature and also worldwide literature. And we had a lot of adaptations from historical facts too, which puts comic books as kind of a parallel way of teaching history and literature and Brazilian culture, which is fine, except for the fact that by the 30s, there was a conservative wave that started to target comic books. And the right and the left were attacking comic books because each of the sides believed comic books to be prejudicial to kids. So they're gonna be lazy, they're not gonna read, they don't want to read, it's cheap, it's shallow entertainment, we need to protect our kids. You know the drill, right? I think it's not a forgotten problem. So we have here on the left is one of many publications by Grafipar, which was a comic book publisher who specialized in publishing horror and erotic comics, all made by Brazilians, of course. It sold a lot. It was really big in Brazil, both erotic comics and horror comics. And then on the right, you have the Donald Duck comic, published by Abril. Donald Duck comic number 1 was actually the first comic published by this company in 1950. They were still publishing Donald Duck until the early 2000s. Yeah. So you probably can't read that, but this issue is number 956 of Donald Duck in Brazil. And it's the 20th year of publication. This comic is from January of 1970. That's amazing, you know? And many times, it would happen in Brazil. Some comics, like Donald Duck or Goofy or Mickey comics, they were translated from American comics. And many times they were made in Brazil. We had a license to create Disney comics too. And that was happening, like comics for kids, like very, your usual funny gags comics, they were being made at the same time of very hardcore comics. We have been publishing like all genres imaginable. And even when we had like a crisis, like a political crisis that would target comics, or an economical crisis which would, like debilitate the economical health of publishing comics, there was still people making comics. And many times they were fighting back. They were fighting against these problems, these structural problems that were happening in the country. One of the greatest examples is O Pasquim. O Pasquim started in '69. We were already in the dictatorship, and it ended in '91 after we got the redemocratization, yeah? So Pasquim was very important because it was a newspaper, a variety magazine, and it brought comic books and political cartoons too. It was responsible for like gathering many very, very important names, such as Ziraldo and Enfio, which are like some of the greatest. And it was the main antagonist of the dictatorship. And they survived. I mean, I think everybody survived. Because people would be dragged off offices and tortured, and they would be put in jail, and then they would be released, and they would go and make another issue. And they would keep beating the regime because that's what they were made for, no? So I have a lot of respect for Pasquim from that time. One of the greatest names that came out of Pasquim, actually he was doing comics and illustration before that, and he kept doing that until maybe last month when he sadly passed, is Ziraldo. Ziraldo is one of the greatest comic book geniuses in Brazil. He was a very strong cultural phenomena. Many people learned how to read because of his books. And also he was like a genius artist, like a graphic designer too. Some of his most known works are Turma do Pererê, this jolly gang here. They are based on Brazilian fauna and Brazilian folklore. And The Nutty Kid, which is the little guy with the pan, the cooking pan on his head. The book, The Nutty Kid, the first book, was a phenomenon. And it got turned into cartoons and movies and comic books, and I mean, they're still very easy to find in Brazil. And then we come to Mauricio, okay? So take a good look at this guy. If I have to summarize Mauricio de Souza's role in Brazilian comics, it would be the same as comparing American comics to Walt Disney and Japanese comics to Osamu Tezuka. Okay, he is undoubtedly the greatest name in Brazilian comics of all time. He's still alive. He doesn't write or draw anymore, but he's the head of an empire. He created a studio that helped him publish, write, draw, color, and publish the comics. And then that grew to a publishing company. It grew to licensing the characters to every single kind of product imaginable. Cartoons, movies, children's books, activity books, whatever you imagine a kid would have access to, Mauricio de Souza has products in that circle, in that realm. This is the very first comic book strip published by Mauricio in '59. It's a very simple story of Franjinha, this little boy, and Bidu, his dog. They went on to become like constant characters in his comic book strips, and then he created more characters. I think by now he has like 500 characters in the catalog. So the most important thing Mauricio created is Turma da Mônica, Monica's Gang. And I know that might call your attention because the main character has the most beautiful name of all. You know, right? You can agree. Yeah, so on the left, Monica #1 from 1970 was the first comic book with stories of this gang, gang of characters. She was not the protagonist of the gang of kids, but then she got so popular, so much loved by everybody that she became like the main character in his whole career. There are, of course, other characters. They're super important too, but Monica is the most well-known. So in 2022, I don't have the updated data on this, but his studio, Mauricio de Souza Produções, sold more than 12 million comics and more than 2 million books, in Brazil only in Brazil. It's a lot. It's a lot. One of the best-selling comic books of all time in Brazil is a Turma da Mônica comic. It sold over 500,000 copies. And for a comic book in the 2000s, this is ridiculous. You know, it's amazing. Usually it never happens. Mauricio has been a popular presence in the comic books seen in Brazil since forever, and then in 2009 he completed 50 years of career, and the editors made a trilogy of books paying homage to his career. And then each of these books have 50 Brazilian cartoonists that were invited to pay homage to Mauricio by drawing his characters. This right here is my rendition of the Turma da Mônica, the Monica's Gang, from the second book. I was very honored to be invited to be part of this celebration of Mauricio's career. And it was also the first time that Mauricio allowed people from outside of his studio to draw the Monica's Gang characters in other styles, because he has like a gigantic team working on Monica's Gang, but everybody draws in the house style. This was the first time he allowed people to draw in different styles. And that was a revolution, which spawned Graphic MSP, a collection of graphic novels. Each book has one of the characters or a few characters reimagined by different Brazilian artists. This is like an amazing collection, very well produced, and it's very special because they're not inviting only the big names to do these comics. They're inviting people from the independent comics, which is where there's, I mean, so many more people, interesting people. It's so big, so big, so big, but the first live-action Monica's Gang movie only came out a few years ago. That's a picture of the main cast, and that's the cover of the graphic novel, which inspired the movie. So when we talk about Mauricio, his importance is so big because there is not much comic book-based TV or movies in Brazil, or video games, or anything. Very few people could manage to break the bubble of the comic book reading community and be so universal and like being everywhere in Brazilian life as Mauricio did. So we had a dictatorship. It was bad. You know about it. In the 80s, when the dictatorship was starting to rot, and we were starting to change to the democratic system again, there was this series of comics, like anthology comics, in the late 80s. They were like very punk rock, very gritty, very acid humor, very countercultural. They were everything the parents hated. You know, I remember once, there's like, doesn't matter, but it's a funny story. Once I bought one of these comics. I mean, I went to the newsstand, I bought a few new, like Monica's Gang comics, the Nutty Kid comics, Spider-Man, and then I bought one of those. And then I was reading and I was laughing so much, and my mom came to see what I was reading. It was like almost pornographic, you know? It was the Geraldão comics. By the name Geraldão, you kind of expect it's not for kids, you know? But yeah, it was an honest mistake, but of course. So many names from humor and political cartooning came from this era, and oh, that's what's missing. Laerte is missing.
Oh, no.
Okay, give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, this is Laerte. Okay, so Laerte is a trans woman, a cartoonist, a comic book artist, a genius, a wonderful person, and she started working on comic books before, like in the late 70s. Her style is amazing. Like, she can draw anything, like full details to very stylized comics, almost abstract. It's amazing. And she was one of the greatest names in the 80s and 90s that was like in this frontier between the independent comics and the mainstream comics, because those gritty 80s comics that I showed you, you guys, they were like selling hundreds of thousands of copies every month, and that's like amazing. That was unprecedented. And especially because it was like countercultural. It was not like mainstream, clean, beautiful for kids. It was hardcore comics. And Laerte was one of the greatest names there. Okay. This is one of the most recent Laerte comic strips. You can see it's like people in suits and very formal attire, dropping a lot of different people into a mold. It's reading family on the side. So Laerte transitioned in the early 2000s. Before that, she identified as a male. And then now she's not just like the greatest cartoonist of all time in Brazil. She's also a political advocate and a very important people talking about trans rights and, you know, yes, that. So another great name that came from this era was Lourenço Mutarelli. Lourenço Mutarelli is a peculiar case because he started doing comic books and illustrations. His work was very visceral, very, very dark, very emotional. and he did some comics and stories and graphic novels. And then he got tired of drawing comics because it's hard work, and he started writing books. And then his books were they blow up. It was a huge success. And then his books were adapted to movies. And then he started acting in those movies. And now he's an actor too. So, and he started writing for theater, and he went to act on theater. And then he got back to comics.
They know that guy.
Yeah, you remember this guy, right?
Remember this guy? Yeah. Yes. The movie, The Second Mother, he's the he wrote that? He's the husband.
Yeah.
What? I didn't know. Oh, I didn't even
See?
realize that was the dad. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he's the dad.
I forgot his
Yeah.
name actually.
I don't remember the name of the
Carlos.
Carlos. Yeah, so you see, you guys already knew a little bit about Brazilian comic books, and you didn't even know about it. So okay, so The Second Mother is not based on Mutarelli's work. He's just an actor there, but his work is very it's everywhere in Brazilian culture, and he's such a funny guy too. I love listening to him talking about everything.
You should expand click the arrows.
Right here. Okay, thanks. Okay, so graphs. Yay! Economical science. Yay! So I found these graphs, and they kind of give you guys the example of how economy in Brazil was complicated in the late 80s and the beginning of the 90s. We had this galloping inflation. Everything was changing prices day by day. And this is a graph of the increase of the Superman comics from 1984 until 92, so almost 10 years. I'm not gonna talk about the math here, okay? Just goes without saying. It increased so much that sales, of course, went down, and many titles were canceled. Superman and Spider-Man were always like big sellers in Brazil, and those titles struggled a lot. Imagine the smaller ones. Imagine the niche comic books. Imagine the independent comic books, the fanzines. We suffered a lot in these moments because it was impossible to publish. Impossible. The publishing companies, they didn't have the budget to publish comics, so they had to rely on like the guaranteed sell American comics, you know, which have been selling since forever. Also in this time, we have this, that's weird because we had the crisis, of course, but at the same time, when it's good, it's pretty good. And when it was good in the 80s or 90s, we had this kind of assembly line way of making comics in Brazil. So every publisher would have a studio, like an in-house studio, where people would make comics there, and they would sell pretty okay. And many of these comics were based on TV celebrities. Like the blonde woman there is a very famous TV, she's still alive, but she's not working with kids anymore, but she was one of the most famous TV show hosts of all time, Xuxa. Os Trapalhões, these guys on the sofa, they were like kind of a Monty Python comic gag group. What else? Seninha, the guy in red, is like a cartoon version of Ayrton Senna, who was one of the greatest Formula One pilots of all time, also Brazilian, and many others. Okay, so the little ninja and those monsters on top are the Goosebump crew. They were very cool to read too. And of course the parrot here, I don't know if you guys know about him, but he's Zé Carioca. He's a character from Disney, created by Disney to be part of the Donald Duck and DuckTales universe, and he's Brazilian. He lives in Rio de Janeiro. So the main thing here I want to point out is that people were making comics and making careers out of comics, which is very hard to achieve nowadays, and they were doing that then. So comics were selling enough in order to employ people. They had like their salary drawing things to be published. And then, you know, like next year there's a crisis, everybody's laid off, and nothing happens, and crisis. In the early 2000s, we have this shift in Brazilian political scenery. In 2002, Lula was elected president for the first time. It was the first left government. I mean, he's pretty much more to the left than the people who came before, but still he's not like extreme left. But it was the start of an age where governments would invest a lot more in like feeding the cultural community, the artistic community, and education. So that, and also the economy got really much better. So in the early 2000s, the indie revolution started, because we had like indie publishing, like independent self-publishing. We had that since the beginning. Everybody tried to do it. It was hard because you could only make like a few copies, and you would only sell to the people around you. You couldn't like sell that in another state. Brazil is way too big and also expensive. But then printing costs were cheaper, and transporting was easier. And there was this rise in respect also for the arts and for comic books. We still had a lot of publishing coming from Brazil, from the US and from Japan. Manga is really big in Brazil since the 2000s too. But we started doing more stuff. We started making our own comics, and we had more stores selling indie comics. We had the internet, you know, the beginning of the internet, to be able to connect to people and talk to people and like kind of build a stronger community. I started making my comics in 2004, so this is more or less during my my beginning.
They were being born.
Oh yeah, you don't remember. Yeah. When I think about that, it's been like 20 years. It's super cool, but it's also like, oh my God. So from this era, there's a lot of people I need to talk to you about. I would love to. I have many friends from this era, but I can't talk about everybody. So I'm gonna tell you guys about Gabriel Bá and Fábio Moon. They are pretty much the most well-known comic book artists from Brazil from the 2000s forward in the whole world. They won the most important prizes in Brazil, in the US, and all over the world. They were published all over the world. They're everywhere. They are everywhere. And they are twins, twin brothers. You might remember Gabriel Bá because he is one of the creators of the Umbrella Academy, which was a TV series from Netflix. Did you know that Umbrella Academy started as a comic book? An almost indie comic book. A very weird comic book that I really like. So Gabriel and Fábio were making independent comics in the early 2000s. They were part of a couple of movements that were bringing together this community, and they called a lot of attention, and then of course they got really big and started publishing worldwide. There is one of their comics that I would really recommend you guys reading. Is called Two Brothers. It's an adaptation of a Brazilian novel, which is a story of a family feud between two twin brothers. So you have twin brothers adapting a story about twin brothers. Apparently they get along pretty well, but the characters don't, okay? It's a really good book. It's drawn by Bá. It is amazing art. And then Fábio draws Day Tripper, which is another really, really, really good comic to understand a little bit more about Brazilian culture. Yeah, cultural. Highly recommended. And then Quarto Mundo, which means fourth world. You know, after the third world comes the fourth world. The Quarto Mundo was a collective of independent comic book authors and editors. I was part of this group for a long time too. It ended in 2012. And the greatest accomplishment of Quarto Mundo was not only bringing people together, and we got to have more than 100 members all over Brazil. Everybody was independent, self-publishing, and our biggest, how can I say, accomplishment, yeah, of course, was not only supporting each other, you know, like we were always bringing everybody up because, you know, it's hard to make comics, especially self-published, and we were helping each other, not only as moral support, but also in selling, because we would create like this network of distribution in Brazil. I could send my comics to every state that had a Quarto Mundo member, and they could send their comics to me. And when I would go to a comic book show or a store, I could sell their comics too. So that was like the paradigm shift from the early 2000s, like the internet and this kind of distribution of indie comics. On the right, you see the cover of a book that was just published by Editora, the publisher is Heroica. It's a book telling the story of Quarto Mundo with a lot of comics and pictures and a whole, dossier about the comics. And the cover is my art. I did that. So, 2010, we have the web revolution. You guys know the internet, what it does to artists. And a lot of people started emerging from all over Brazil. You know, the people that couldn't afford to print comics and go to the Comic Cons, they would start an Instagram account or Tapas or Webtoons and publish their online comics for free. And they became superstars. Crowdfunding also started in Brazil in 2011. It's like probably the main reason indie comics survived until today in Brazil. It's because we can crowdfund them, and we don't have to rely on our own pockets, and we don't have to rely on the publishers. It was another paradigm shifter, yeah. But the economy in Brazil always keeps shifting, so sometimes we have problems. In 2014, actually 14, it was the start of this weird feeling that something was wrong. Dilma Rousseff was just re-elected president of Brazil, and in 2016 there was like this coup that took her out of power, and what came after that was a weird, very complex time with a far-right government that nearly destroyed us all. And I need to show you guys this because on the right, this cover, it's a very controversial thing in Brazil. This comic book's kind of like a Punisher type character, Doutrinador. The thing is, he kills bad people. He kills bad politicians. But what started as like this very on the fence, you know, like I'm not right and I'm not left. Pretty much faster, it got very to the right. Okay, so this kind of comics got very weirdly fascist very fast. So it's very controversial. But at the same time, we had like comics like Criança Índia, which is very, very, very powerful in putting like indigenous people in the spotlight and creating this character, which is like a ancient child indigenous warrior that kills fascists. It's so cool. And then lately we had the most recent experience in reading digital comics in Brazil is called Functum. It's a reading app full of comic books from Brazil. They are all in Portuguese for now, but you can download them if you read something in Portuguese or if you just want to look at the pictures. Functum is a very interesting experience because it gives Brazilians a way to compete with webtoons, for example. You know, the idea is that it grows as much as it can. Okay, do you still have some time?
Yeah, you have 10 minutes.
Okay, so I'm gonna do an Eminem rap freestyling of the rest of the lecture. Okay. No, okay, so comics in Brazil today are getting better, okay? Are getting better. The problem is, there's a lot of bookstores closing. There's a lot of newsstands closing. I mean, we would buy comics in Brazil in the newsstands, on the streets, you know? We don't have that anymore. Printing costs are way up again, so it's much more expensive. But at the same time, there has been like adaptations to movies and TV. There are games being made adapting comics too. a lot of comic book mindsets being shifted to IP creation because we figure out that that brings money when it works, you know. Our Comic Cons are amazing, amazing, amazing. We have one of the greatest in the world, CCXP, which happens in São Paulo every December. It's probably bigger than New York Comic Con by now, and probably bigger than San Diego too. It's pretty huge. And we're still making it happen, but it's still a bubble, it's still niche, you know, it's hard to reach out of this bubble. Like I told you guys, there's so much stuff to read and to enjoy in Brazilian comics, and we just need people to find it and read it. So before, comics were affordable, accessible, and diverse in the themes, not in the creators, okay? Because they were cheap and they were everywhere. Brazil has always been big on kids' comics, adaptations, social themes, and historical themes. But the focus was always in the southeast region. You know, it was always male, white, straight, and middle-class guys making comics. Most, okay? Okay, I need to be clear here. There were people, you know, there were women, there were black, indigenous, there were people making comics, but there were so few of them. Because you know how the world goes. I mean, I'm not saying it's okay, of course, but back then, that was the reality. There was a lot of mixed perception by the public. Some people think comic books are amazing. Some people think it's trash. And it could be relatively stable as a career. Okay, you could have a job in a studio drawing comics for Disney or for Mauricio or for Ziraldo, make a career. Now, it's a niche. There's been a change in consuming patterns. Comic books are way more expensive now. They're more luxurious now, and they're not affordable to everybody anymore. But then again, how can you survive in a country? I mean, you need to publish and sell. But you're doing that in a country where people read so little. People don't read that much in Brazil. So what do? You make more expensive books for less people, and that's a very big problem. It's not a very stable career. I mean, I've been working with this since 2004, but I do a lot of stuff. I teach, I illustrate, I give lectures, and I publish my books. It is a lot of work, but we keep doing that because it's important, and we, like Brazilians, we never give up, right? But the thing is, I want to close with this. I showed you guys white guys making comics, okay? Remember, Laerte was a white guy, and then she transitioned, okay? But back then, it was really hard to find diversity in comic book productions and in comic book characters also. Monica's gang, which are the most famous comic book characters of all time in Brazil, they had one black character until the 2000s, and then they got the second one, and they were never the protagonists. How come in Brazil? Okay, Injustice, Mauricio did create an indigenous character in the 60s. Papa Capim, which is an indigenous boy, he was there, but you know, it's not enough. And of course, the people making his comics were white. So we have diversity. Now, more than ever, people from any kind of way or walk of life, they are making comics. And that's really important. What made that possible was investments in education, bringing people out of misery, bringing people to read more, making reading and culture affordable for the people and affordable for artists to make them and to make them available for people to find. So the last 24 years were really, really, really important in this matter. So, I did just a quick research. All of these are African Brazilian artists, black artists. These are all, the top row is indigenous artists, the bottom row are artists from the north and northeast. Some of them are also indigenous. These are all LGBTQIA plus artists, and these are all women. I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, that's good, we have 10 girls making comics, yay. No, there's so much more, so much more. I just don't have space or time to show you guys everything and everybody, which is a shame. But it's important. And it's so important that these are 3 of the coolest, most recent Comic Cons in Brazil. Perifacon is a Comic Con that's created for people in the favelas. So most of the artists are from the poorer parts of São Paulo and regions. The events happen in the poorer parts of São Paulo. POCCON, actually POC in Brazil, POC means another thing. It's a queer event, a queer Comic Con. All the artists are from the LGBTQA plus community. And on the right, it just ended. See, 28 April. It was the Comic Book Week in Manaus. Manaus is the capital of Amazonas, which is in the middle of the Amazon forest. They held a Comic Con there, gathering artists from the north of Brazil. Many of them were indigenous artists. And it's amazing that that's being possible now, because it wasn't possible 25 years ago. It would never happen 25 years ago. And now we have this. And it's amazing. Okay, so if you guys want to know more about Brazilian comics, of course you can Google everything. But I have a list of Brazilian comics that were published in the US in English, which is of course easier to understand. I can send that to you guys if you want to DM me or send me an email. I can send the list to you, or I can send it to Monica, and Monica can send it to you, okay? And you can look for the comics. If you guys have any questions, I would love to answer. And thank you so much for listening to me talking non-stop about the thing I love most in the world after Monica. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Yes, that's it.
We have questions, guys. Barbie, are you on webtoons?
No, I'm not. A few reasons. I'll try to keep it simple. First, I didn't have time to translate the comics. It takes some time. And also adapting the scroll, because I never made comics. I mean, I'm not going to show my comics, but they are very hard to adapt to the webtoon format, because I like to play with the page layouts and narratives, so it's really hard to break it. And also because I have a little weird feelings about the way the creators' rights are dealt with. Because when you publish in Webtoons, you agree that Webtoons is kind of a co-author of your work. And they have a say in whatever you want to do with your character. It doesn't mean that they will interfere, but they can, and I think that's a problem. So,
If you have any online or ways to buy your book.
okay, so my books in English, both books, they are on Amazon. You can find them there. And
You have some PDFs like that.
I have PDFs of all my books, but they're in Portuguese. I would be happy to share with you guys, but you would have to translate.
In the social media, like
Oh yeah, well, sure. You can follow me on social media too, of course. You can email me, that's my website. My stories, that's the problem. I can either focus on making new stuff, or I can focus on republishing old stuff in English. So I'm still trying to figure out what to do, but I would love to have more of my material in English.
yeah.
I have a question, but it's
Yeah.
something that I heard the other day in the radio in Argentina that like made me think. It's just a technical question. Like they were like publishing some new books that are just published, and one was was a graphic novel, and the journalist said like, oh, this is a graphic novel by Lana, and it tells a story, a little bit of plot, and then it's a
Yeah, I think it all depends on the material. We usually would call graphic novel when it's a book. I mean, by book, I mean a square spine, you know, with more than 80 pages, let's say. Because graphic novels started with Will Eisner in the US. He made like a longer story, more mature, more dramatic, and he called that graphic novels because he didn't want it to be called comic book because it wasn't actually a comic book, like a floppy issue, you know. So graphic novel became the term to publishing graphic narratives like sequential arts in form of books. But then, if you get like Mafalda strips and you publish a collection in a book, is that a graphic novel? Or are they still comic strips? It's a collection of comic strips. Usually I would say that graphic novels are meant to be read as a whole, as a book, as a novel, like a proper, you know, like a volume. And comic book is everything. So every graphic novel is a comic book, but not all comic book is a graphic novel. You know, kind of like that.
I'm confused, but yes.
Yeah, well, like this. Imagine comic book as the medium. So every manga from Japan is a comic book,
Yeah.
but not all comic books are manga.
Novels, yes.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
they still have, I mean, they are not novels, but they still have a narrative. They,
Mhm.
Right? Like, especially comics.
Yeah.
More than, like, because, for instance, Mafalda is kind of like each cuadrino, what was it?
Strip.
Strip, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the single story, right? But
Mhm.
like a comic has like a whole narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
In a bigger
Mhm.
narrative of
Yeah.
characters.
We have strips.
Yeah.
Usually in the beginning, in the newspapers, we had strips that were like continuous stories. So they were not like self-contained short things. They were connected with each other. So if you collect that and they are sequential, they might work as a book. But in the case of like in Mafalda or even like Calvin and Hobbes or Garfield or Peanuts, there is like a major storyline, kind of, but usually the gags are self-contained. I wouldn't call a collection of that a graphic novel, especially because it wasn't made with the intention of being read as a comic novel, as a graphic novel. It was made to be read as a daily strip in the newspaper. So I think the artist's intention changes the result. But at the same time, we got asked about Webtoons. Webtoons is a reading app for comics. It's a Korean app, if I'm not mistaken. It's super famous, and one story that started being published there is Lore Olympus, which is like a slice of life drama comic story about Greek myth. It was later published in book format, so it started as a web comic. It was made to be read in an app, like in a scrolling. And then it got adapted to a book. But when you adapt from book to web, from web to book, from book to movie, you change a lot of stuff. You know, the intention is there, but you change the way you read it. So, depends. It's a word I love to use, depends. Yes, please.
Would you ever want the work to like transform or kind of be introduced into the cinema world? Like, would you want to start doing film? If you answer this question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, I would love to because I love movies. Is it my computer that's beeping? I'm sorry, guys. I love movies. I would love to be involved in anything movie related. I did work with storyboards for some time. Not for the movie industry, for the TV and advertisements, but I did it. And my stories were adapted to theater in Brazil. Like a very small theater group did a play about my comics. And later the same group made a couple of short films also based on the comics. But it's very amateur and it's been a long time. But yeah, I would love to.
But I like the way you say like you're kind of the director when you draw your comics. You're kind of the director of a movie.
Yeah, well, I feel that. I think I can make like a comparison. Like making comics is like the cheapest way to make a movie. It's not the easiest, but it's the cheapest way to make a movie because you don't have to have a big team and gear and so many costs. You just get a paper and pencil and you can do like a space opera if you want. So when I make my comics, I like to think about the experience of telling a story. It's a mix of making a movie and maybe making music or poetry. It's like I can do things that I can't do in movies, and I do things that I can't do in music, but it's kind of a mixture of that.
What's advice you can give someone starting out, like working in like comic books?
Okay, how much time do you have?
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Everything correct.
Just do the damn thing. Okay, that's the best advice I can give. Of course, study, practice a lot, read a lot, get to know more than just comics, or if you're in movies, get to know more than movies. Expand, but keep doing it, keep making it. You don't have to, be a hostage of the self-doubt. Like, I'm not good yet. You're never gonna be ready. You just have to keep making things, and you will get better as long as you're making it. Yes?
What's the most challenging part you would say that you face today as an illustrator? What's the most challenging part?
To draw or in general?
Just in general, like what?
Oh, making money. Of course. Drawing is amazing. I love working. Making money because, we have, aside from everything, we have AI coming on. So it's also an enemy that we need to understand and figure out what we're going to do. But with the internet, everything is made to seem like it's easy and free. And it's not. So of course I could publish my comics online and not charge a dime, and of course it's my choice. But how am I gonna pay my bills? So usually comic book artists in Brazil, comic books are the side job. People have a main job. People work in anything, to have a stable income and make comics because they love. A few people can transfer their main occupation to making comics. But it's pretty hard, I would say, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Done?
Okay. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Thank you, guys. Woo! Read more comics.